The old community center felt colder tonight than usual. 16-year-old Lily pulled her thin jacket tighter around herself as she walked through the dimly lit hallway. Her baby brother Danny sleeping peacefully in her arms. The fluorescent lights above flickered on and off, casting strange shadows on the cracked walls. This place had been their home for almost 2 months now, and every night felt the same. But tonight was different. Tonight she had a plan. Danny stirred slightly in his sleep, making those soft baby sounds that always made Lily's heart melt. At 8 months old, he was getting heavier each day, but she didn't mind carrying him everywhere. He was all she had. Left in this world, and she was all he had too. Their mother had left them 3 months ago, just disappeared one morning without even a note. Lily still remembered waking up that day, finding Danny crying in his crib in their mother's room. Completely empty. The foster care system had tried to help, but things got complicated fast. They wanted to separate them, saying Lily was too young to care for a baby. She had run away twice, taking Danny with her each time. After the second time, a kind social worker had found them this place. The Roosevelt Community Center wasn't exactly a home, but it was better than sleeping on the streets. As Lily walked toward the recreation room, she could hear the familiar sounds of evening life in the shelter. Mrs. Chen was watching her favorite soap opera on the old television, muttering at the characters in Chinese. Roberto was talking loudly on his phone in Spanish, probably arguing with someone about work again. The Johnson family's twin boys were running around, playing tag between the folding chairs. This was their strange little community now. The recreation room was mostly empty tonight. Perfect. Lily carefully placed Danny in his portable crib, making sure he was covered with the soft blanket that used to belong to their grandmother. It was one of the few things their mother hadn't taken when she left. Danny's tiny fingers curled around the edge of the blanket, and Lily smiled despite everything. Even in his sleep, he looked so peaceful, so trusting. She turned toward the corner where the old piano stood. It was a beat-up upright piano, probably. From the 1980s, half the keys stuck when you pressed them, and it was definitely out of tune. But to Lily, it was pure magic. She had discovered it during their first week here, when she was desperately trying to find ways to keep Danny calm during his fussy evenings. Music had always been her escape, even before their world fell apart. Her grandmother had taught her to play when she was just 5 years old. Those Saturday afternoons felt like a lifetime ago now. Grandma Rose would sit next to her on the piano bench, guiding her small fingers across the keys, teaching her simple melodies. "Music lives in your heart, baby girl," she used to say. "No matter what happens in life, they can never take that away from you." Grandma Rose had been gone for 2 years now, but her words still echoed in Lily's mind every time she played. At first, the other shelter residents had complained about the piano playing. "Some of us are trying to sleep," they would grumble. "Keep it down over there." But something strange had started happening over the past few weeks. Instead of complaining, people began gathering around when she played. Mrs. Chen would pause her television shows and listen quietly. Roberto would stop his phone conversations and nod along to the rhythm. Even the Johnson twins would settle down, sitting cross-legged on the floor, mesmerized by the melodies tonight. As Lily's fingers found their way across the familiar keys, she felt that same magic happening again. She started with a simple lullaby, something soft and gentle. Danny was sleeping, and she didn't want to wake him. But as she played, the music seemed to fill up all the empty spaces in her chest. All the worry, all the fear, all the uncertainty. About tomorrow, it all poured out through her fingertips onto those worn-out keys. Mrs. Chen appeared in the doorway, holding her cup of tea. She didn't say anything, just stood there listening with tears in her eyes. Roberto came next, still holding his phone, but no longer talking. Soon, other residents began gathering around the piano. They formed a small circle, some sitting on the mismatched chairs, others standing against the walls.
Right.
Nobody spoke. They just listened. Lily moved from the lullaby into something more complex, a piece she had been working on for weeks. It didn't have a name yet, but in her mind, she called it Danny's song. She had started composing it during those long, sleepless nights when Danny was sick with a fever and she was too scared to close her eyes. The melody captured everything she felt about being his big sister, the overwhelming love, the crushing responsibility, the fierce determination to protect him no matter what, as she played. Lily let her mind wander to the conversation she had overheard earlier that day. Two volunteers had been talking near the front desk about some kind of talent competition happening downtown. Big cash prize, one of them had said. Could really change someone's life. The words had stuck with her all afternoon. A cash prize. Money that could help them get out of here, maybe even find a small apartment where they could be a real family. But could she really do it? Could she actually get up on a stage in front of strangers and perform? The thought made her stomach twist. With nervousness, playing here in the recreation room was one thing. These people knew her. They understood her story. But performing for judges who didn't know anything about her life? That was terrifying. Danny made a soft cooing sound in his sleep, and Lily glanced over at him. His face was so peaceful, so innocent. He didn't know they were homeless. He didn't understand that they had no real future planned out. To him, she was just his big sister who fed him and changed his diapers and sang him to sleep every night. But Lily knew the truth. She knew that her small savings account was almost empty. She knew that their time at the shelter was limited. She knew that something had to change soon, that they might end up separated forever. The music flowing from her fingers grew stronger, more determined. She thought about all the dreams she used to have before their mother left. Well, she had wanted to finish high school, maybe even go to college. She'd imagined herself performing on real stages someday, not just playing for small groups of homeless people in community centers. Those dreams felt impossible now, but maybe they didn't have to be. As the last notes of Danny's song faded into the quiet room, the small audience erupted in gentle applause. Mrs. Chen wiped her eyes with a tissue. Roberto nodded appreciatively and gave her a thumbs up. "That was beautiful, Mia," he said softly. "Really beautiful." Lily looked around at these people who had become her unlikely family. They had all lost something, ended up here because life had thrown them curveballs they couldn't handle. But somehow, they were still here, still fighting, still hoping for better days. If they could keep going, maybe she could too. That night, she lay on her narrow cot with Danny sleeping beside her. Lily made a decision. Tomorrow she would find out more about that talent competition. Tomorrow she would take the first step toward changing their lives. The old piano in the recreation room had taught her something important. Sometimes the most beautiful music comes from the most broken places. And maybe, just maybe, her broken heart could create something beautiful enough to save them both. Lily's hand shook as she folded the crumpled paper she had found on the community center's bulletin board. The talent competition flyer looked official with its bright colors and bold letters. But she had read it so many times the corners were starting to tear. Open auditions, all ages welcome. Grand prize, $5,000. That money could change everything for her. And Danny. The morning sun felt warm on her face as she stood outside the gleaming Riverside Theater. But her stomach was doing backflips. Danny was strapped to her chest in the baby carrier she had gotten from the donation bin at the shelter. It was a little worn, but it worked perfectly for carrying him around. He was awake today, his big brown eyes taking in all the new sights and sounds around them. Sometimes Lily wondered what he thought about their adventures together. The theater looked like something from a movie. Tall glass windows, shiny marble steps, and people in expensive clothes, walking in and out like they owned the place. Lily looked down at her own outfit, the cleanest jeans she had, and a sweater that used to belong to her mother. She had spent an hour that morning trying to make herself look presentable, but standing here now, she felt like she didn't belong. A line of people stretched around the building. Singers with guitar cases, dancers in bright costumes, performers of all kinds chatting excitedly about their acts. Everyone looked so professional, so confident. A woman with perfectly styled hair was warming up her voice with scales that sounded like something from an opera. A teenage boy was practicing magic tricks, making coins disappear and reappear with smooth movements. Lily felt her confidence shrinking with every person she saw. Danny started making his happy babbling sounds, reaching out toward the colorful balloons tied to the theater entrance. His innocent joy made Lily smile despite her nerves. "You like those balloons, little man?" she whispered to him. "Maybe after this is all over, we can get you one. They even let her audition, that is." The line moved slowly forward, and Lily could hear fragments of conversations around her. People talking about their experience, their training, their previous performances. She had none of that. Just a 16-year-old girl with a baby and a dream that felt more impossible with every passing minute. "Next," called a voice from the registration table. Lily stepped forward, her heart pounding so loud she was sure everyone could hear it. Behind the table sat a woman with a clipboard and a name tag that read Volunteer Coordinator. She looked tired, like she had been dealing with people all morning. "Name?" the woman asked without looking up. "Lily Patterson," she managed to say, her voice barely above a whisper. "Age 16. Now the woman looked up, her eyes immediately going to Danny. "Excuse me, honey, but children aren't allowed in the audition space. It's a safety regulation." The words hit Lily like a punch to the stomach. But I don't have anywhere else to leave him. Oh, he's my brother and I'm his guardian." The coordinator's expression softened slightly, but she shook her head. "I'm sorry, dear, but rules are rules. The audition panel needs complete focus. And babies can be ... disruptive." Lily felt tears starting to form in her eyes. She had used their last few dollars for bus fare to get here. She had practiced for hours, imagining this moment, hoping this could be their way out. "Please," she said, her voice cracking. "This is really important. I can keep him quiet, I promise. He's a good baby. Wish I could help. But insurance. Liability." The coordinator began, but other people in line were getting impatient. "Come on, lady, some of us have been waiting for hours," someone called out from behind. "Yeah, move the line along already," another voice added. Lily felt her face burning with embarrassment. Danny sensed her distress and started to fuss, making small whimpering sounds. She bounced him gently, trying to keep him calm while her own world felt like it was falling apart. All those nights practicing on the old piano, all those dreams of a better life, they were slipping away because of a stupid rule about babies. "Look, I'm really sorry," the coordinator said, already looking past Lily to the next person in line. "Maybe you can come back when you have childcare arranged." Childcare? As if Lily had money for that. As if she had anyone in her life who could watch Danny while she chased impossible dreams. She was about to turn away, about to give up and head back to the shelter, when she heard a different voice. "Excuse me, miss." Lily turned to see an older man in a janitor's uniform. He had kind eyes and calloused hands that spoke of years of hard work. His name tag read Frank. "Couldn't help it over here," Frank said quietly. "I've been working here for 15 years and I've seen a lot of talented young people come through these doors. You look like you really need this chance." Lily nodded. Not trusting herself to speak without crying, Frank glanced around, then leaned closer. "There's a small break room just down the hall, where I keep my supplies. It's quiet, safe, and I'll be right there the whole time. If you want, I could watch your little brother while you audition. Unofficially, of course." "Really?" Lily's voice was barely a whisper. "I raised 4 kids of my own," Frank smiled. "I think I can handle one little guy for a few minutes." The coordinator was already moving on to the next person, but Frank caught her attention. "Hey, Jennifer, if the baby isn't actually in the audition room, that should be okay, right?" Jennifer looked annoyed but nodded quickly. "Fine, whatever. Just make it fast." Lily's hands were shaking so badly she could barely hold the pen as she signed the audition form. Frank led her down a hallway to a small room filled with cleaning supplies and a couple of chairs. It smelled like lemon cleaner and floor wax, but it felt like the most beautiful place in the world to Lily. "Now, don't you worry about this little fella," Frank said as Lily carefully transferred Danny from the carrier to his arms. "We'll be just fine. You go show them what you've got." Danny looked up at Frank with curious eyes but didn't cry. It was like he understood somehow that this was important. I don't know how to thank you," Lily said. "Just get in there and sing your heart out," Frank replied. "I'll be right here when you're done." As Lily walked back toward the audition room, she could feel her legs shaking. 5 minutes. She had maybe 5 minutes to change their lives. The hallway seemed to stretch on forever, and she could hear her heart beat in her ears. Other performers were warming up, running through their routines one last time. She paused outside the audition room door, taking a deep breath. Through the small window, she could see 3 judges sitting at a long table, looking bored and checking their phones. They had probably seen hundreds of people today, heard every song and seen every dance. What could she possibly do that would make them pay attention? But then she thought about Danny, trusting Frank completely even though he was a stranger. She thought about Mrs. Chen and Roberto and all the people at the shelter who gathered around when she played piano. She thought about her grandmother's words, "Music lives in your heart, baby girl." The door opened and someone called her name. "Lily Patterson, you're up." This was it. Everything she and Danny had been working toward, everything they needed to survive, came down to the next few minutes. She stepped into the room, her worn sneakers squeaking slightly on the polished floor, and walked toward the piano that waited for her in the center of the stage. The audition room felt huge and cold. Lily's footsteps echoed as she walked across the polished wooden floor toward the piano in the center of the room. Bright stage lights shone down from above, making everything feel like a dream or maybe a nightmare. She had never been in a room this fancy before. The walls were covered with red velvet curtains, and the ceiling was so high she had to crane her neck to see it. At a long table in front of the stage sat 3 judges. They looked exactly like what Lily had imagined, serious, professional, and completely uninterested in her. The woman in the middle had silver hair pulled back in a tight bun and was wearing glasses that made her look stern. She was flipping through papers without even glancing up. The man to her left was checking his phone, scrolling through messages with a bored expression. The third judge, a younger woman with short black hair, was typing something on her laptop. None of them looked at Lily when she walked in. "Name and age for the record," the silver-haired woman said in a flat voice, still not looking up from her papers. "Lily Patterson." "I'm 16, Lily answered, her voice sounding tiny in the big room. "What? Will you be performing today?" This time it was the man with the phone who spoke, though he was still staring at his screen. "I'm going to play piano, an original composition." Now the woman with the laptop glanced up briefly. "Original? You wrote it yourself?" "Yes, ma'am." The 3 judges exchanged quick looks. Lily couldn't tell if they were impressed or annoyed. The silver-haired woman finally looked at her directly for the first time. Her eyes took in Lily's appearance, the faded jeans, the slightly too big sweater, the worn sneakers that squeaked when she walked. Lily could practically see what the judge was thinking. "This girl doesn't belong here." "Well, go ahead then," the woman said, waving her hand dismissively. "If 3 minutes maximum. 3 minutes.
Ow.
Lily's mouth went dry. All those hours of practice, all those dreams of a better life for her and Danny, came down to 3 minutes in front of 3 people who looked like they'd rather be anywhere else. She walked to the piano bench and sat down carefully. The piano was beautiful. A shiny black grand piano that probably cost more than she and Danny would see in their entire lives. When she pressed one of the keys gently, the sound was perfect, rich and clear. So different from the beaten-up upright piano at the shelter behind her. She could hear the judges settling back in their chairs. The man put his phone face down on the table with an impatient sigh. The woman with the laptop closed it halfway. They were giving her their attention. But Lily could feel their skepticism filling the room like cold air. Her hands were shaking as she placed them on the keys. For a moment, her mind went completely blank. What if she forgot how to play?
Out.
If her song wasn't good enough? What if Danny started crying in the other room and Frank couldn't calm him down? Then she thought about last night at the shelter. Mrs. Chen sitting in her usual chair, tears in her eyes as she listened to the music, Roberto nodding along to the rhythm, his phone conversation forgotten. The Johnson twins sitting quietly on the floor, completely mesmerized. Those people understood her music because they understood her life. But these judges, they had no idea what it was like to be 16 and homeless and responsible for a baby. Lily closed her eyes and let her fingers find the opening notes of Danny's song. The melody started soft and gentle like a lullaby. She thought about all those nights when Danny was sick, when she was so scared and tired but she had to stay strong for him. The music carried all of that, The fear, the exhaustion, but also the overwhelming love she felt for her little brother. As she played, something magical happened. The cold, intimidating audition room seemed to disappear. She wasn't performing for judges anymore. She was back in the recreation room at the shelter, playing for Danny and for all the people who had become her strange little family. The music flowed through her fingers like it had a life of its own. The gentle lullaby gradually grew stronger, more complex. Lily let the melody tell their whole story, how their mother had abandoned them, how they had ended up at the shelter, how she had to drop out of school to take care of Danny. But the song wasn't just sad. There were hopeful moments too, bright notes that spoke of Danny's first smile. His first laugh, the way he looked at her like she was his whole world. Behind her, the room had gone completely quiet. She couldn't hear any shuffling papers or impatient sighs. Even the air conditioning seemed to have stopped humming. It was nothing but the music filling every corner of the space. Lily's fingers moved across, the keys with growing confidence. This was the part of the song she loved most, where the melody soared, where all the pain and struggle transformed into something beautiful. She thought about her grandmother's words, "Music lives in your heart, baby girl." Grandma Rose had been right. No matter how broken their lives had become, the music was still there, still perfect, still full of hope. She could feel tears on her cheeks, but she didn't stop playing. This was for Danny, for all the nights she had sung him to. Sleep, for all the mornings she had promised him that everything would be okay somehow. The music swelled to a crescendo. Every emotion she had been holding inside, pouring out through the piano keys. Then, gradually, the song came back to where it started, gentle, peaceful, like a promise that no matter what happened, love would always be there. The final notes hung in the air for a long moment before fading into silence. Lily kept her hands on the keys, afraid to turn around. What if the judges were checking their phones again? What if they were already writing notes about the next audition? What if her 3 minutes were up, and they were waiting impatiently for her to leave? But the silence stretched on. No one was shuffling papers. No one was clearing their throat to dismiss her. Finally, Lily took a deep breath and turned around. The silver-haired judge was staring at her with wide eyes. There were tears running down her cheeks, and she was clutching a tissue in one hand. The man who had been so focused on his phone was sitting forward in his chair, his mouth slightly open like he couldn't believe what he had just heard. The young woman with the laptop had her hand over her heart, and her eyes were red with unshed tears. For what felt like forever, nobody spoke. The silence was so complete that Lily could hear her own heartbeat. Then slowly, the silver-haired judge stood up. When she spoke, her voice was completely different from before. Soft, gentle, full of emotion. "What? What's your story, sweetheart?" The question hit Lily like a wave. These three people who had seemed so cold and uninterested just minutes ago were now looking at her like they really saw her. Like they wanted to understand who she was and where her music came from. Lily felt more tears coming, but this time, they weren't tears of fear or embarrassment, or tears of relief. Someone was finally asking about her story. Someone wanted to know about her and Danny, about their struggles and their dreams. She opened her mouth to answer, knowing that everything was about to change. Lily wiped her eyes with the back of her hand, trying to find the right words. The three judges were still staring at her, waiting patiently for her to speak. The silver-haired woman had walked around the table and was now standing much closer, her stern expression completely gone. Up close, Lily could see that her eyes were kind. The kind of eyes that belonged to someone who had lived through difficult times herself. Lily's voice cracked. She cleared her throat and tried again. "I don't really know where to start. Wherever feels right," the judge said gently. "We have time." That was something Lily rarely felt like she had. Every day was. A rush to take care of Danny, to find food, to make sure they had a safe place to sleep. Standing here in this beautiful theater, with these three strangers who suddenly seemed to care about her story, she felt like maybe she could slow down. For just a moment. 3 months ago, I woke up and my mom was gone, Lily began, her voice barely above a whisper. She didn't leave a note or anything. She just ... disappeared. My baby brother Danny was crying in his crib, and I realized we were completely alone. And young judge with the laptop had tears in her eyes. How old is Danny? 8 months now? It was only 5 months when she left. Lily's voice got stronger as she continued. I tried to take care of everything myself at first. I had some money saved from a part-time job I used to have, but it didn't last long. Baby formula is expensive, and diapers, and all the things he needs. ... The male judge leaned forward. What about other family? Grandparents? Aunts or uncles? Lily shook her head. My grandmother passed away 2 years ago. She was the one who taught me to play piano. My mom never told us who Danny's father is, and my dad left when I was little. I tried staying with my mom's sister for a while, but she has 3 kids of her own and couldn't handle Danny too. That's when social services got involved. They wanted to separate you, the silver-haired judge said. It wasn't a question. She seemed to understand exactly what had happened. Yes, they said I was too young to be his guardian, that he needed to be with a proper family. But he's my brother. It's all I have left, and I'm all he has. I couldn't let them take him away from me. Lily's voice was getting stronger, more determined, so I ran away. Twice. The judges exchanged glances. The silver-haired woman sat down in a chair that had been pushed aside near the piano. Must have been terrifying. 2 teenagers alone on the streets, was Lily admitted, but I had to protect him. The second time we ran away, this social worker named Ms. Rodriguez found us sleeping in a park. She was different from the others. She actually listened to me. She's the one who got us into the Roosevelt Community Center. It's not perfect, but it's safe, and they let us stay together. Is that where you've been living? The young judge asked. For almost 2 months now. There's this old piano in the recreation room. Half the keys stick and it's completely out of tune, but it works. I started playing it to help Danny sleep when he was fussy. Music always calmed him down, ever since he was tiny. Lily smiled. For the first time since walking into the audition room, the other people at the shelter complained at first about the noise. But then something funny happened. They started gathering around when I played, Mrs. Chen. She's this elderly lady from China. She would turn off her soap operas just to listen. Roberto, who's always on the phone arguing with someone, he would actually hang up and sit down too. Hear the music. Even the Johnson family's twin boys would stop running around and just sit quietly. The silver-haired judge was nodding. Music has a way of bringing people together, doesn't it? That's exactly what my grandmother used to say. She told me that music lives in your heart, and no one can ever take that away from you. I didn't really understand what she meant back then, but I do now. Lily looked down at her hands, the same hands that had just played the most important performance of her life. When everything else fell apart, when we lost our home and our family, the music was still there. The song you just played, the male judge said, you said it was original. When did you write it? I've been working on it for weeks, but it really started the night Danny got sick with a fever. I was so scared. I didn't have money for a doctor. And I didn't know what to do. Just sat by his crib all night, playing this melody over and over in my head. I call it Danny's song, because it's about him, about us, about trying to keep going when everything feels impossible. The young judge was typing something on her phone now, but not in the bored way she had been before. She looked focused, like she was taking notes. Lily, can I ask you something? Why did you decide to audition for this competition? The prize money, Lily answered honestly. $5,000 could change everything for us. I could find us a small apartment, somewhere Danny and I could be a real family. I could maybe even go back to school, finish my education. I dropped out when Mom left because I had to take care of Danny full-time. You dropped out of school at 16 to raise your baby brother, the silver-haired judge repeated slowly, like she was trying to process the weight of that sacrifice. I had to. He needed me more than I needed algebra. Class! Lily's voice was matter-of-fact, but there was a hint of sadness there too. Sometimes I miss it, though. I was actually pretty good at school before everything happened. The male judge stood up and walked over to the window. Lily, I have to ask you something, and I want you to be completely honest with me. If you won this competition, if you got that prize money, what would you really do with it? Lily didn't hesitate. First, I'd find us a place to live. Nothing fancy, just a small apartment with a kitchen so I can cook for Danny instead of relying on the SE shelter food. Then I'd make sure he has everything he needs. Good formula, diapers, maybe some toys. He doesn't have any toys right now, except for an old stuffed rabbit someone donated. She paused, thinking, I'd probably try to get my GED so I could eventually go to college. And I'd want to get a real piano, not just for me, but for the community center too. Those people at the shelter, they love music just as much as anyone else. They deserve to have something beautiful in their lives. The young judge looked up from her phone. Lily, while you've been talking, something incredible has been happening. I posted a short video of your performance on social media, and it's already being shared thousands of times. People are commenting, asking about your story, wanting to help. Lily's eyes widened. What do you mean? I mean, your story is touching people all over the country. Look at this. She turned her phone around to show Lily the screen. There were hundreds of comments, hearts, and shares happening in real time. Local news stations are already calling, wanting to interview you. The silver-haired judge stood up, and for the first time since Lily had walked into the room, she was smiling. Sweetheart, I think your life is about to change in ways you never imagined. 6 months later, Lily stood backstage at the city concert hall, adjusting the collar of her new dress. It was nothing fancy, a simple blue dress that Mrs. Chen had helped her pick out at the thrift store, but it was clean and pressed and made her feel like someone completely different from the scared 16-year-old who had walked into that audition room with nothing but hope and a baby carrier. Danny was sitting in his stroller nearby, clapping his hands together and babbling happily. At 14 months old, he was walking now, stumbling around their small apartment with the kind of fearless joy that only toddlers possessed. His first word hadn't been mama or dada. It had been Lily, which made her cry happy tears for an entire afternoon. You ready for this, little man? She whispered to him, straightening his tiny bow tie. Tonight was the annual fundraising concert for Homeless Youth Services, and Lily was the featured performer. It's a scared girl who once played piano in a shelter. Recreation Room was now headlining a show that would raise money to help other kids like herself. The month since, the audition had been like living in a dream that kept getting better. The judges hadn't just given her first place in the competition. They'd done something much more important. Dr. Patricia Wells. The silver-haired judge, who had seemed so stern at first, turned out to be a retired family court judge. Worked with Ms. Rodriguez and other social workers to make sure Lily could legally maintain custody of Danny, while getting the support they both needed. The prize money had been just the beginning. The viral video of her audition had brought in donations from all over the country. People sent baby clothes for Danny, gift cards for groceries, and even a few checks with notes like "For Your Education Fund" written in careful handwriting. But the most amazing gift had come from an unexpected source. Mr. Peterson. An elderly man who had seen the video had called the theater directly. His own daughter had died in a car accident years ago, leaving behind a small apartment that he had never been able to bring himself to rent out. After hearing Lily's story, he had offered it to them rent-free for 2 years. My daughter would have wanted it to go to someone who needed a fresh start, he had said when they first met. Their apartment was tiny, just 1 bedroom, a small living room, and a kitchenette. But it was theirs. Danny had his own crib in the bedroom, surrounded by the stuffed animals that kept arriving in packages from strangers who had heard their story. Lily slept on a fold-out couch in the living room, but she didn't mind. Waking up every morning in their own place, making breakfast in their own kitchen, it felt like a miracle that never got old. The best part of the apartment, though, was the piano. Not just any piano, the same beautiful black piano from the theater where she had auditioned. The theater had been upgrading their equipment, and when Dr. Wells mentioned that Lily was still practicing on the broken-down shelter piano, the theater manager had insisted she'd take the old one. It barely fit in their living room, but somehow they had made it work. Lily, a voice called from behind her. She turned to see Ms. Rodriguez approaching with a clipboard and a warm smile. 5 minutes until showtime. How are you feeling? Nervous, Lily admitted. But good nervous, if that makes sense. It makes perfect sense. There are over 800 people out there tonight, all waiting to hear you play. The mayor is here. And Channel 7 is broadcasting the concert live. 800 people. 6 months ago, Lily's entire audience had been a handful of homeless people in a community center recreation room. Now she was about to perform for hundreds of strangers, all because they wanted to support kids who were going through what she had experienced. "Is the shelter group here?" Lily asked. Ms. Rodriguez smiled. Front row center. Mrs. Chen wore her best dress, and Roberto actually combed his hair. "The Johnson twins have been asking everyone if they can get autographs after the show." Lily laughed. Some things never changed. Even though she and Danny had moved out of the Roosevelt Community Center, they still visited every week. Lily had started giving free piano lessons to anyone who was interested, and the center had used some of the donated money to buy a better piano for the recreation room. "And Frank?" she asked. "He's here too, with his wife. He keeps telling everyone that he knew you were special from the moment he met you." Frank, the janitor who had watched Danny during her audition, had become like a grandfather to both of them. He and his wife Helen had started babysitting Danny once a week so Lily could attend GED classes. She was on track to graduate early and had already been accepted to the local community college with a full scholarship. The sound of applause from the concert hall meant the opening act was finishing up. Lily's heart started beating faster. In a few minutes, she would walk out onto that stage and perform for the biggest audience of her life. "Danny's going to watch from the wings with Helen," Ms. Rodriguez said. "She got snacks and toys, so." "Don't worry about him." Just then Helen appeared, the same kind woman who had become like a grandmother to Danny. He reached out for her immediately, chattering in his baby language that somehow she always seemed to understand. "You go show them what you can do, honey," Helen said to Lily. "We'll be right here cheering you on." The announcer's voice echoed through the theater. "Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome tonight's featured performer, a young woman whose story has inspired thousands of people across the country. Let's hear it for Lily Patterson." The applause was thunderous. Lily took a deep breath and walked out onto the stage, the bright lights temporarily blinding her. As her eyes adjusted, she could see the massive audience stretching back into the darkness. In the front row, she spotted Mrs. Chen wiping tears from her eyes before the music had even started. Roberto was sitting up straight in his suit, looking proud. The Johnson twins were bouncing in their seats with excitement. Lily sat down at the piano bench and adjusted the microphone. "Before I play tonight," she said, her voice carrying clearly through the speakers, "I want to tell you about my little brother Danny. He's 14 months old now, and he taught me something important. About music. He taught me that the most beautiful songs don't come from perfect places or perfect lives. They come from love, from the decision to keep going, even when everything seems impossible." She placed her hands on the familiar keys. "This song is called Danny's Song, and it's about a little boy who saved his big sister just by existing, just by needing her to be strong." The opening notes filled the concert hall, the same melody that had started as a desperate lullaby in a homeless shelter. But tonight, it sounded different. Tonight, it wasn't just a song about survival. It was a song about hope, about second chances, about the power of love to transform broken lives into something beautiful. As Lily played, she thought about the journey that had brought them here, from sleeping in shelters to performing in concert halls, from having nothing to having a home, a future, and a community of people who cared about them. Most importantly, from feeling completely alone to knowing that they were surrounded by love. The final notes of Danny's song faded into silence, followed by a standing ovation that seemed to go on forever. Through the applause, Lily could hear Danny's happy babbling from the wings and knew that whatever came next, they would face it together. The scared 16-year-old girl with a baby and a dream had become something she never thought possible. She had become home.